Hey there, my name is Porter, and we need to talk about line calls in pickleball. Recently, John Sincola, the number 6th best singles player in the world according to pickleballtournaments.com, posted this image on Pickleball Forum and Facebook and on his Instagram page. It's been blowing up recently, and for good reason. That ball looks clearly in to me, but it was called out by his opponent. Along with the photo, John had a few words of his own to say. Line calling in professional pickleball is becoming a problem that needs to be addressed quickly. The sport is evolving very rapidly at the moment. Every time you turn around, there's new tournaments, fresh faces, and more money up for grabs. Along with that, unfortunately, comes increased financial incentive for cheating. Currently, across all professional tours, there are no repercussions for blatant cheating or poor line calling. In fact, at the moment, it's pretty much a free-for-all monitored by only one referee, and that one referee is usually hesitant to overrule calls unless they are especially egregious. Even at that, there have been several examples lately of important professional matches that have had several calls overruled in the same match. He references his match that this photo was taken at. He says, "This was a semifinal match at the Atlanta PPA where there were 2 overruled calls and a third that was initially overruled and eventually turned back at 8-9 in game 3. That match eventually ended 10-12 in the final game with thousands of dollars and ranking points on the line." So basically, John thinks he got screwed over because there were some bad line calls. Now, these were overruled, but at the same time, he's saying that he doesn't want them to happen in the first place. And of course, who would want that to happen? So John actually offered up some possible solutions that he thought might work to help solve this problem. Or at least not solve it, but potentially help it get to the point where it's less common in pro and lower levels. His first idea would be a video review system like in pro tennis. Now, obviously, he says the big problem with this is the cost. I don't think pickleball is at the place yet where it could afford to have all these systems at tournaments consistently, and certainly not across all courts in early rounds. He says the pickleball will get there, but not in short term. And I mean, just from some quick research on Google, John's right. Hawkeye costs about $60,000 to $70,000. That's a lot, especially for pickleball where it's at its early stages. Aside from eventually getting a review system in place, John says what he thinks is the most feasible solution is to impose incremental match penalties for having calls overturned. So what that means to him is the first overturned call in a match is a warning. The second is a point penalty, meaning you'll get a point taken away from you. The third overturned call is a game, which means you'll have an entire game taken away from you. And if you have 4 overturned calls, the entire match will get forfeited and your opponent will win. He says that we have to remember that referees will not usually intervene in a call unless they see it clearly. With that in mind, if it happens once a match, you can chalk it up to a mistake. But if it continues to happen, there's good reason to believe that the player overruled is intentionally cheating for an edge and should be penalized accordingly. Now, speaking from personal experience, I've had people who have made some pretty terrible calls against me, and they've actually gone back and seen the footage and apologized because they weren't meaning to. Also from experience, I've made some bad calls. It's sometimes just honestly hard to see the ball. That doesn't mean you're intentionally cheating. It doesn't mean you're trying to beat them by doing a crappy thing. It just means sometimes you might not see the ball. Now, this isn't the case for everyone. Sometimes there are players who are intentionally, as John says it, trying to get an edge by cheating. And I think that this is a really good way to try to enforce players making good calls. Now, I'm not sure if the penalty system will be imposed anytime soon, or if at all. But I do think it would be good for the sport if it was. And I also am pretty sure that the Hawkeye system or some other sort of video review type thing will be implemented pretty commonly into pickleball within the next few years. I mean, the sport's progressing at such a pace that it's gonna be necessary at some point. And you know, sadly, from watching the match with John, I genuinely do think that his opponent was trying to gain the edge by making some tight calls. And with only one ref there that can't see the entire court and they're focused just on the kitchen line, there's almost no way you can prevent against that unless there is some sort of penalty and or video system implemented. Hey there, it's future editing Porter here, and I was just reading online that another possible solution could be maybe actually get the refs a high chair like they have in tennis. It'll be way easier to see the court, and it might help them overrule lines a lot more. I don't know, just a thought. Now, just to reinforce, I definitely don't think that all players who make bad line calls are cheating. It's very hard to see the ball sometimes, especially when you're running around on the court and if you have to turn around and check if a ball was out that went right past you. But yeah, I definitely think there does have to be some sort of thing implemented into the game that can get this more under control, because as of late, there are some problems with it. And you know, I'm not quite sure where I was going with this video, but I just wanted to tell you all what's been happening in the pickleball world. And I read this recently: when in doubt, play the point out. And I think that's a really good way to think of this. You want to come off as a nice guy, not the person who makes tight calls. So if it's close, I mean, I try to play it out, and I think you should too. But yeah, that's it for me. See ya.